Hey everyone, I'm Paul with MadCap Software. In this video, the next video in our series on source control with MadCap Flare, I'm going to go over the essential processes and steps that you're going to be doing when you're working with source control in Flare. So this is an important one because these are the things that you're going to be doing all the time. There are other things, other source control tasks that you might do once in a while, some that you might do once in a blue moon, some that you might never do. But these are things that you got to know about because you're going to be doing them day in, day out. So at this point, I'm assuming you have a remote repository set up, or depending on your provider, whatever the terminology is for it, and you're connected to it with your Flare project. So let's actually go into Flare because I want to show you just a little bit around the user interface, the things that you're going to be working with in Flare. But again, you don't have to always use or ever use the Flare interface for these tasks. As I mentioned early in this series, you can use different applications. And in fact, I use Flare most of all, but I will also use Visual Studio sometimes if there's something that I want to do that I can't do in Flare because Flare just didn't add that feature in it yet, or I might need to use Git Bash, the command line application to do it. So, I'm going to start with Flare. We're going to look in the interface and look at some of these different places where you're going to be working. All right, this is one of the projects that I created in a previous video called Central Bound Project. So I'm bound to MadCap Central, which means that I'm using Git. Okay, now the first place, probably the main place that you are going to be working is in your source control ribbon. So if you're not bound to source control, you're not even going to have a ribbon. And this one, because it's bound to central and is using Git, I'm seeing all this Git stuff in here. If you're bound to one of the other providers, you're going to see different terms in here. And you look in this and you go, well, there's a lot in here. Well, you don't need to get bogged down with all of these things. There's just a few things in here that are part of the essential processes and steps that you're going to be doing each and every day, all day long. And in this case, in the case of Git, we're really talking about the pull and the push and synchronize, and also the commit all and commit buttons. Those are the main things that you're going to be using. Now, I am going to open up here a couple of other places in the interface that you might be working. One is here, the Source Control Explorer. If I open that up, let's go to the home page of this because there are different views, right? So the home page just lets you see, all right, these are the different things I might be dealing with, the different views. Most of all, you're going to be dealing with pending changes. So as you're making changes in your project to files, they're going to load in here. They're going to load, and then you can take action on them. And then there is settings. I just don't really ever go in there. It's just a simple way to see the connection that you have. Branches, where we haven't talked about branches yet. That's coming in future videos, so I'm not even going to go through that. Import project. This is just another place to import a project from source control, but I don't think I've ever used this one right here. And then you can see actually your network settings if you need to do that. So most of all, when I come in here, I'm dealing with pending changes or branches. All right. Now, there is also this pending changes window pane, which opens by default here in the middle. And it's sort of similar to this thing over here where you see your pending changes. As you make them, it's going to load these things in here. So it's just another place where you can deal with them, and you can pinpoint things that you want to commit. Again, we're dealing with Git, so commit is a thing. And I'm going to go through these things here in a bit. But you're going to have these same parts of the interface if you have another provider, if you're bound to something else. It's just that, things are just called differently. All right. So those are the places that we're concerned about. One other place I want to point out, it's down here in the lower right. You're going to see these buttons. These are part of your status bar, actually. So you have to have your status bar on, which I do right here. If I turned it off, you won't see it down here. Click that, put it back on. And so these are just shortcuts for things. And this, you're only going to see these if you're bound to Git or Central, like I am. And these were added. I'm so glad these were added. It's really a nice reminder, even if you don't have the source control stuff open, the pending changes or the source control explorer, so that you can see, oh, I've made changes and I need to deal with these. These, as we work through this, you're going to see numbers pop up, and it's just an indicator that, oh, you've got changes that you need to deal with, or things that you need to send up to the remote location. And this one over here has to do with branches. Again, we'll deal with that later when we get into the branches videos. All right, now I'm going to show you this because you can be bound again to Git or Central, and because it's all Git there, so it's the same steps. But you can also be bound to Perforce, Subversion, TFS. Now, I just kind of broke this down to the essential things, the essential steps that you must do all the time. And if you look at these, you're going to see these are actually all very similar. These things just do the same stuff. There are some slight differences, and behind the scenes, of course, there are technical explanations for what these things do. But if you really just try to simplify it, it's what I said earlier in this video series. You are bringing things down from the remote location. You're sending things up to the remote location, and you're dealing with these changes as you're making them. So it's not that complicated, actually. So let's start over here with Git and Central. Pull. So that's the first thing actually that you want to do. When you open up Flare and you open up your project, you're bound to source control, and maybe you've got other people on the team. This is especially important. If you have other people on your team, you want to do a pull so that you are getting the changes that those people have sent up to that remote, in this case, Git. It's a remote repository. So you pull, and then you just start working away. And after a while, or at a certain point, you commit those changes. Well, what's a commit? Well, commit, it's a snapshot of the changes that you're making. I actually kind of like to think of it as a bundle, because all these different files are being changed or added or deleted, and then you're just kind of like grouping them together, putting a comment on them and saying, I did this stuff. And so then that commit goes up as one thing up, eventually, once you push it, which is the next step, push or synchronize. Now, synchronize, if I go back to Flare, you can see push is right next to synchronize. Well, what's the difference? Well, synchronize simply, it combines these two steps, pull and push. And it's a best practice to always pull first and then do a push. So synchronize, you could do a push, but if there are changes that you don't have yet, it'll let you know, and you need to do a pull anyway. So I like to just, cut to the chase and just do a synchronize. All right. So, you've done a pull when you first started working, you're making changes, you commit those changes, and then, so it could be, it could be a couple of hours, or, however long. You don't know what other writers have done. So it's a good idea to synchronize so that you pull once again to get their changes, and then you push your commit up there. All right. Now, the last step in here is merge files. And this really, what I mean by this has to do with if other people make changes and they collide, they conflict with your changes, well, you need to do a merge, because you're actually not going to need to do this all the time. It's only when conflicts happen. And the merge happens automatically if there isn't a problem. If things are, one person is making a change to one file, you're making a change to a different file, and it can seamlessly merge these, it will. That's what a poll is doing. It's not only bringing those things down from the remote location, but then it's merging it together with your stuff. All right. So I'm actually going to talk about merge files later in a later video when I focus exclusively on conflicts. But you can see how simple this is. It's just a few steps in here. Now, if we move over to Perforce Helix Core, you'll get latest. Okay, it's similar to the poll thing. Again, there's technical differences in here, but you are taking the stuff from that remote location and you're getting that stuff. Then Perforce has this idea of checking out files, sort of like you go to the library and you have to check out a book. And that can be really nice to help keep things sane with other writers, because if you have this workflow where one person's checking something out, the other person might want to look and see, okay, who has these files checked out, so that you are trying to avoid conflicts. You can do that sort of thing. Now, Git doesn't have that concept, because Git, remember, it has distributed development. So you have a local repository and a remote repository. You don't have to check anything out, because the local repository, it's just you. So you're not checking anything out. But with Perforce, check things out and then you submit them, which means you are now putting them back up at the remote location. And then you also have the whole thing about merging files when you have conflicts. Come down to Subversion. It's even simpler here. We just have these 3 steps: update files. So you're getting you're just refreshing what you have locally with the stuff that's remote, and then you make your changes. And it uses this terminology commit also, but it's not exactly the same thing as commit here. Basically, you are sending your things back up to the remote location. Once again, merge files for conflicts. TFS, it's got some similar things to Perforce. You're getting the latest stuff, you're checking things out, and then you're checking things in, and then merge files. So you can see that there are some slight differences. There are differences, but really, all in all, you're kind of doing the same thing. So let's go into Flare and let's actually work through this now. I am bound to Central, so we are just going to do this, but you can imagine the same things that you would do with these other providers. All right, so I actually have, if you remember when I set this up, I actually went into VMware and I set up another writer, just pretending to be another writer. So there's 2 writers on this team, and you want to make some changes. Let's just kind of go through this. So let's go into this folder. Let's say this writer wants to make a change, just a simple change here. So I'm going to go change from writer 1. All right, just going to add that text right there. Let's make some other changes. Let's go into this one, the second knowledge check, and let's just kind of do the same thing here. Change from writer 1. All right, and I'm saving as I go. Now, if you look down here in the lower right, I had mentioned these buttons down here. Notice this one, the number 2 is here. I've made changes to 2 files, and it's letting me know, hey, don't forget, you got to commit these things because you've made changes. And I could click this and it would open up this Source Control Explorer over here. And you can see they've already populated in here. These are changes, so that it's been flagged as modified. And if I go to pending changes, you're going to see they're in here too. All right, so just different places where you can look. Now, let's do something else. Let's add a file, and let's just add it at the root of this. So let's go new topic, writer 1. Let's just do that. Okay. And notice these icons. You're gonna, so the red check mark here, this thing's been changed. This thing's been changed. You got a green plus here. This is new. This thing has been added. That file has been added. Let's do one more. Let's go in and let's delete this topic called the end. Now it's linked to this TOC, so I have to make a decision. Do I want to keep the links or remove the links? And I'm just going to remove the links. And so that is going to update these two TOC files as well. And say, yes, I want to go ahead and delete that. So it deleted that. Now let's go back to Source Control Explorer and look in pending changes. Now I'm getting more stuff in here. All right, let's move that out. Modified. I deleted that file. This file was an add. And then these have been modified, these TOC files. All right. So by the way, with the add in here, you also have this button up here with add, but I don't think I've ever really used that. It focuses in on adding new files. But as you can see, all this stuff is just kind of getting bundled together in one group. And you can see my number down here in the lower right is now at 6. All right, so things are going on here. Now, let's go ahead. So that is the first, actually, so I kind of skipped ahead. I didn't do a poll first, and I should have done that when I first started working. So I do a poll. Now it's saying you have to do a commit first in order to poll. If I had done a poll first, I wouldn't have gotten this message because I haven't made any changes in here. So, okay, let's go ahead and do a commit. Now, you should always add a comment in here because it helps you just in case something happens, you need to go back and look at your history. You can identify, oh, these are the changes that I made. So I'll usually, and this is the way I work, I'll work kind of in segments where I might be working on maybe documenting one feature and one part of the feature. Like I'm just, a certain subfolder or something, just an area. And so my comment will reflect that. But here I'm just sort of, this is a demo. So I'm just going to, let's just say I'm going to say changes from writer 1 for demo. Okay. But normally I'd get relatively descriptive in there so that if I look at my history, I can see, oh yeah, that's when I made those particular changes that I want to, pinpoint. All right, so I did that. Now I am just going to commit. Oh, before I do that, notice that this stuff is in this section called included changes. By default, it moves into this section. You also have this section down here that says excluded changes. So you might be going, oh, I made this one change, like I added this file and I didn't want it to get included in this commit. So I could right click this. That's another thing you can do. You can, different areas of the interface, you can right click and do certain source control tasks. So I could move this to exclude and it moves it down here. So it's not going to be part of that commit. I could just keep this stuff all together, but I'm going to go ahead and put this back, right click it and say include. All right, moves it back up there. Let's commit it. And it's just going to run through this and empties all this out. If I go to my pending changes window pane and yeah, so refresh and there's nothing in there. It emptied it all out. Now in the lower right, you can see the number 1 has been added here with next to the up arrow, which means, hey, you have some commits. Now you got to send them up. It's just a great reminder in here. And this is, again, this button is the same as this synchronize. So I could do a push, but I'm going to go ahead and do a synchronize so I can do a pull just first. So I'm going to click that. And my remote is MadCap Central. It's my own. I'm single bound to that. I'm going to say, okay. and it is going to go through the steps of pulling. You're going to see it here, pulling, and it's going to see if that anything is different, and it didn't find anything. It says it's already update. So now it pushes and it's done. Okay. Now what we can do is we can actually go up to our remote. And in this case, it's central. Again, you can use other applications also to check on this. And I have actually bound it. I actually have it added it to Visual Studio, so I can look there too. But let's just go look on MadCap Central. All right, so this is my license up there, and this is my project. So I can go open up my project, and I'm going to go to commits. I can go look in commits, and I can look in files in here. So files, I could just expand this. There's my new file in there. And if I looked under knowledge check, open this up, in this thing, you can see there's my text. So it's getting up there, it's getting up to the remote. And if I look in commits, I can see, yeah, that is the change I made, changes from writer 1 for demo. Now, I'm actually looking at a version of Central that by the time you see this video, this is going to be a little bit different. You are going to see, and I'll show you later in the video series, I'll show you the new stuff where you're going to see a drop down in here where you can switch between branches. But of course, once again, I haven't even gotten to branches yet. But I just want to show you that these changes are going locally to remote. All right. Now, let's go here. This is my VMware, and I am writer number 2, central bound project. Here it is. If I open up that same stuff, you can see the differences in here. All right. First knowledge check. Let me open up this topic, and you won't see the change from the first person. So it was right under the heading. It's not there. Same thing there. This topic should be deleted, the end, and it's not, and I don't have the new topic in there. So this person's just got different stuff. So the first thing, remember that they do is do a poll. So this person is, let's make sure they're logged in first. MadCap Central, yep. Lloyd Dobler, different person. I'm going to do a poll from MadCap Central, from that Git repository up there, and it's pulling this stuff down. All right, and it finishes. There we go. So there's my change from writer number 1. And I would see the same thing in here. If I went into a second knowledge check, that other topic, the end, is gone. Here's the new topic. All right, so we're synchronized here. Now I could come in and let's say that second writer, just going to make that change right there in that same topic. All right, and save my change. And do I want to make any more changes? Let's just go with that. Just simple change. All right, there's the number down here. So I really like this. I like depending on this stuff down here. So the way that I work is I typically go in and I just click this and it opens up my source control explorer to that point. But if you prefer to use the pending changes window pane, you can certainly do that. If you prefer to, click the buttons up here in source control, you can do that. I really like these things down here. I just find it quicker. So, all right, let's do second writer change, demo. All right, and so that's all I'm doing is I made one modification to that. I'm going to commit it. All right. And what happens after that? Now, notice my number didn't change here. You have to, if it helps if you just click in that interface, and now it moved over to that one. Now, by the way, you have another number over here with the down arrow. And that is for, you can guess. So the up arrow is, all right, I got to move things up. The down arrow is, do I need to bring things down? Well, you're not always necessarily, this sort of has to, I'm trying to think of the way to explain this. So Git has another command called a fetch. It has a pull, but it has a fetch. So a fetch is basically you're getting the changes from the remote, bringing them down, but you haven't merged them yet. You haven't merged them into your local stuff. A pull is doing both a fetch and a merge at the same time. So just because somebody makes changes on the same branch, I'm on master branch here, and they make them there, I'm not necessarily going to see them there. I would have to do a fetch in order to see this. And Flare doesn't have a fetch option anywhere in here. But if I were on a different branch and I did a pull, and then I came back to this branch, then I would see them there. So a lot of times you're not going to see the number on the second one. You may or may not. All right. So I can click this to synchronize, or I can click push, or I can click synchronize up here. Any number of ways. I'll just click it there. And let's do this. So it's going to go through the actions again. I'm going to do a pull, then a push. And should just take just a moment here and complete successfully. So it's already cleared out here and it made the change. So now if I go back to the first writer in here, and the change that I made, the second writer was in here. I changed it somewhere down here. Not seeing it yet. Have to do a pull. All right. Did a pull. And it's going to bring that in. And then I should be up to date in sync with this other writer. And there it is. There's the change right there. So very simple demo of how this all works. Again, this is Git, but you can just look at those other steps for the other providers, and you're just kind of going through the same kinds of things. So those are the basic, the most essential, the processes, the steps that you've got to do all of the time. In the next video, I'm going to move on to some extra things for the different providers, things that you might do from time to time. So we will talk to you in that video.